Hello and welcome. I'm Nayantara Rai. Today, Paytm made its market debut, listing on Dalal Street, however, with a 9% discount. It's the country's largest IPO of 18,300 crore rupees. Whichever way you look at it, the story of Paytm and its founder, Vijay Shekhar Sharma, is the stuff that you find in the movies. He taught himself English, comes from very humble backgrounds, had to take a loan to keep Paytm afloat. Then came along demonetization, which made Paytm a household name. On the cap table, managed to get investors like SoftBank, Jack Ma, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. Didn't have the kind of journey on day one on the market debut, but can that change? Nevertheless, it was a very action-packed day for the Bombay Stock Exchange. Vijay Shekhar Sharma was flanked by his family, early investors as well. Let's get you first up all the drama that unfolded and where you'll also get to see a very, very emotional Vijay Shekhar Sharma.
जब भी कभी राष्ट्रगान आता है और एक लाइन आती है भारत भाग्य विधाता और मेरी आंखों में से आंसू आ जाते हैं.
पेटीएम की आज स्टॉक एक्सचेंजेस पर लिस्टिंग हो चुकी है और कंपनी ने आज अपनी आगे की योजनाएं ही नहीं बल्कि भावनाएं भी जाहिर करी.
और विजय शेखर शर्मा ने अपने क्रिटिक्स को तंगड़ा जवाब दिया कि ये जो लिस्टिंग है वो सिर्फ प्राइस के लिए नहीं बल्कि एक पर्पस के लिए है, एक उद्देश्य के लिए है.
If you believe that India will be economy coming after the Western economies in Asia, then you have to believe in Paytm. The purpose is so pious that every door opens, every road gives away.
सिर्फ पेटीएम मैनेजमेंट के लिए ही नहीं, दूसरे इन्वेस्टर्स और बैंकर्स के लिए भी इमोशंस बहुत आए थे. मॉर्गन स्टैनली के एमडी कमल यादव ने कहा कि इस इमारत में एक ईंट उन्होंने भी लगाई है.
We are so very proud to have partnered Paytm for the historic IPO. And I would say it feels very warm inside to say इस Paytm की इमारत में एक ईंट हमने भी लगाई है.
पेटीएम की कहानी सिर्फ इन्वेस्टर्स की नहीं है बल्कि उन कस्टमर्स की भी है जो कि आपको हाई स्ट्रीट मॉल से लेकर एक किराना स्टोर तक मिलेंगे. और कंपनी के सीएफओ ने उन्हीं कस्टमर्स की बात की लिस्टिंग सेरेमनी में.
I wanted to thank our customers and merchants who have made us a part of their lives. Who have trusted us and allowed us to serve them, and also been very demanding, challenged us to become more innovative, more efficient, and build more things for them. So I wanted to thank our customers and merchants.
पेटीएम भले ही स्टॉक एक्सचेंजेस पे लिस्ट हो गया है, लेकिन फिर भी कंपनी के आगे कुछ चैलेंजेस हैं जो उसको फेस करने हैं.
रेवेन्यू ग्रोथ जरूर हुआ है लेकिन उसके साथ साथ फॉलिंग मार्केट शेयर और प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी में आना कंपनी के लिए एक बड़ा चैलेंज होगा.
It gives me great pleasure to bring on board Devina Mehra, Nikhil Kamath and Karan Walla. Gentlemen and the lady, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. It's ladies first always on ET now, so I'm going to start with Devina. Devina, you've seen many cycles. The boom and the bust of TMT, the rise and the fall of infra, and now startup which have become the new tech companies. What is your understanding of this entire new tech cycle? Is this fad, mania, or an indication of what lies ahead?
Hi, Nikunj. Okay, yeah, you are right that one has seen too many cycles, and sometimes I wonder whether having too long a memory is a positive or a negative. In fact, very recently, I was reading about this IPO frenzy on the Paris bourse back in 1881. So IPO frenzies are not quite a very recent phenomena, and that this was, it said, like, even shortened prospectuses used to be handed out along with food and at food stalls and so on. So this new listings catching the fancy of people is a very old phenomena, and in India also you have seen, and obviously everybody remembers the Reliance Power, which was such a hot IPO, and that went bust. But even others like DLF was a hot IPO. It listed and doubled from the IPO price for the next few months, and since then has not even seen the IPO price again. On the other hand, Infosys was an undersubscribed IPO, which not many people would remember. So what I would like to first tell your viewers is that whatever is the frenzy in a particular IPO or even just after that IPO list is not often a very good indication of the long-term prospects of the company. So, they must always keep that in mind. And coming back to your question of this new age tech, first of all, I mean, many of them are not really tech companies. They are just using a digital platform to access customers, which is a very different thing from saying that their core competence is technology, which it is not. So therefore, entry barriers often are not. I mean, almost always. Why I should say often? It's almost always not that is not the barrier. Mostly the barrier is how much money can you spend to get to the customers. So whoever has deep pockets, that is one very big part of the story. And where actually the companies going for IPO are on a negative footing, because most of them, if you see leading up to the IPO, whether it is Paytm, whether it is Zomato, or even Policybazaar, they all cut back on promotional expenses to show slightly better numbers, which usually means a reduction in losses, not really a profit in the first place. But now that you are in the public markets, you want to show some improvement there, whereas you may be competing already or may compete in the future with others who have still access to practically bottomless pockets of the VCs. So that puts you at a disadvantage. So, the tech is a misnomer in some senses. I would call them, consumer tech companies, or most of them would be D2C companies, which is, directly selling to consumers rather than a real technology company.
Nikhil Kamath, Zerodha is an extraordinary franchise. You've changed the rules of the broking industry. You've done to the broking industry what perhaps Jio did to the telecom industry. I'm sure you take a lot of pride in that. But somewhere do you think we need to understand that where the future of the tech companies is headed? Acquiring customer and growing is very easy, but remaining relevant for the shareholders in terms of profitability will be the biggest challenge for the new tech companies, because they can be relevant for the customer, but they not be relevant for investors.
Yeah, Nikunj, I think you've made a mistake here by calling three very pessimistic people to talk about tech on a day when, there's plenty of pain already on the street, with Paytm and everything. I haven't heard from Karan yet, but I think I echo Devina's sentiment quite a bit. I am circumspect about valuations today. A lot of people are pricing in the future, like the future has already happened. To make an assumption that, the GDP per capita will go from 2,000 to 4,000, 5,000, the economy will grow at a certain pace over the next 10 years. If one were to make that assumption, then sure, discretionary spending power goes up. The money being spent on companies like Nykaa and many of the peers who are coming online right now, that probably goes up too. But to value these companies like the assumption of the future has already occurred might be a bit of a stretch, in my opinion. So I'm fairly bearish about prospects of companies with ridiculous valuations today, not just in the listed space, but also in the unlisted space. You hear about one new unicorn being formed every week and all these new companies coming in. The one big thing that has changed between now and maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago is the access to foreign capital, the access to VC money has gone up tremendously. And I think that is cueing market fundamentals and leading to the rise of very many companies which are valued at a very high premium to what they were historically. Not for a second am I saying, these companies are not great, they're not doing innovative stuff, they are not required. They all are. They have definitely a use case in the ecosystem. What I do not agree with is the valuation multiples that one can attribute to them today.
Karan, Nikhil Kamath has already branded you in terms of you're cautious on tech. So let me first hear your views and let's understand this debate that what is the right value for these business. I completely agree with Devin. I completely agree with Nikhil when he say that these are great companies, but valuations are stretched. So what is the right value? Right now, it's like saying that you are pricing not gold, but silver at the price of diamond. What is the right price for these companies in terms of valuations?
I think Nikhil is right. I unfortunately though have to be optimistic at all times, right? That's the nature of our business. But actually, and I'm like of the three people here, like the least qualified to talk about public markets. But I think there's two factors at play, right? One is the point that Nikhil made about the companies, all of these companies and the ones that are going public in the coming months and years are very much in the mainstream of things, not a nice niche that used to be there. And I think that's been the one change over the last 2-3 years. What I think is also important to remember is maybe over the last, so I've been doing this for 11 years now, but I know the one question that's always come up is, when are you going to have the big IPOs? And the answer to that has always been, wait for it and look at the demand that will come. I can tell you, nobody thought 2 years back that this sort of demand will be, precipitated. It's largely also because of two other things. One is just the amount of sheer liquidity in the markets that are there, and also the tailwinds that India is getting from, the net of China effect. So I think all those things have to be taken in place. My own guess, by the way, is that had some of these events not happened in the last couple of years, I think the interest and the way some of these companies have run up in terms of public market valuation possibly could have been there, but at a much lower valuation, right? Because it is inflated because of that. But I think the interest in the market, both from institutional and from what I understand and retail investors, is very much there. But clearly, I think we all have to be very careful. And as a private market investor, I can tell you, I think we all have to be very careful in terms of where we're coming in, how we're pricing it. And if you're priced, 2 to 3 years out, then you have to meet those expectations quarter in, quarter out. As a public market company, as a private company, you can afford to have a few slip-ups, and that it's going to have an impact in the very short term. But to one point Davina made, unfortunately, VCs don't have bottomless pockets, neither do private equity guys. So I think that discipline is you're starting to see that already. Ultimately, a lot of it comes down to just supply demand economics. It's really that simple. I've started my career when the .com boom was just about happening, and I've seen what's happened obviously since then. So I think that's the point of caution that needs to be told. And I think that's how some of the public market stocks need to be at least looked at, and the ones that are going public over the next couple of quarters at least.
Devina, that's a very interesting point. Now, between the 4 companies which have gone public, we have a combined market cap of about $50 billion. That's a sizable market cap. These valuations currently are commanding valuations based on where they were in terms of the private market. They've become public now. Public, the minute you go public means quarterly numbers, analysts call, more scrutiny, television commentators like Nikunj Dalmia will comment on you on a daily basis. That's more scrutiny. So what happens to the price discovery in the public market for the startup space now?
Oh, one thing, of course, Nikunj, you are saying that they are priced based on where they were on the private market. That is actually not true, because most of them, even if they have raised money as recently as 3 months or 6 months or 8 months ago, they are going at a multiple of that number, whether it is Nykaa or Policybazaar or all of them. So it is not even what the private equity guys or the VCs who had spent a lot of time on them had actually come up as a valuation. Nothing fundamentally would likely have changed in 3 months or 6 months or 8 months. But now the public markets are expected to and maybe are willing to pay a big multiple to that. So that's the word of caution right there. And any time in history when you start to look at that, what is the new valuation measure I should use? That becomes again a red flag. Karan mentioned the .com boom. I mean, at that time it was eyeballs, that you don't need to look at profits, you don't need to look at even revenues. As long as you are getting the eyeballs, it's a multiple of that. So there are every time there is this kind of appetite for any kind of paper, then there is always a logic that is made up. And also these companies have to not just execute on a 1 to 3 year basis, they would have to execute on a 15, 20-year basis to justify these valuations. So it is there, as one word of caution, which I said earlier, is that scrutiny is more. So even going into the IPO, typically they tend to cut down on marketing spend. So thereafter, also there is that treadmill of quarterly results, as you just mentioned, and which means that there is pressure to be managed differently from how they were managed as a private company. And it is not just about existing competition. If the niche, which was started out as a niche, has been proven to be enough of an opportunity, you will see more people coming in. And you will see maybe some existing players getting into that area. And one, since we seem to be like listing out all words of caution, the international experience in such companies post-listing has not been great, whether it was Uber, whether it was Lyft, whether it was DoorDash and all. Nothing has done extremely well post-IPO on listing, for not just on listing, on the listing day. I'm talking more since then over the next few months or years. So I would say that if you are an investor, this is separate from exactly what you asked, but if you are an investor, too much of, I think, people's mind share, if not their portfolio share, is going into focusing on this one area. Whereas I would advise retail investors that, don't think it's like buying a lottery ticket, which seems to be the mindset at times, that I invest in this process and I'll make something out of it for sure. So look at your portfolio, and now even at lower entry points, you have good services which can advise you on making a basket for you and so on. So look at those things. And rather than just focusing too much on this IPO, which at the moment looks like a gold mine, at least till today. And so, look at things, step back a bit. And don't get into that mindset. I always remember Richard Branson's quote, opportunities are like buses. There is always another one coming along. So don't get caught up in FOMO.
Yeah, that's a lovely quote, isn't it? Okay, Nikhil, you've been a trader, you are an entrepreneur, and you are also an investor. What, to your mind, is the right way to understand valuations of some of the new tech companies? Because, Nikhil, these businesses would be there. Zerodha as a franchise is here to stay. Since you've been a trader in the past, you're an entrepreneur, you understand market, and you also have small investments and seed investments and other startups. You understand the whole way of valuing some of these companies. What is the right way to value them? Get obsessed with cash flows and profits, or is there other metrics which we need to understand?
Well, Nikunj, I'll be a bit candid here. There are many ways to value companies, but the way in which companies are valued today and probably have been valued historically at most times is sentiment, right? If I have Elon Musk buying something, 10 other people are buying it. Based on that, 100 other people are buying it. Influencers like that exist, not just in America, in India, we have our own. So most often you are driven by mass sentiment, and the psychology of things is why a retail guy, applies for an IPO or buys something. If you were to ask me how many people I think are actually researching these IPOs that they're applying for versus how many are, listening to some friend in their own peer group who they think is smart, I would bet on the latter being significantly more important. So valuations are driven by sentiment. Like Devina was saying, everything in life is cyclical. As are stock markets. This crazy euphoria will not last like it has not lasted at many times in the past. There will be a cycle of corrections and then maybe we have euphoria again. But the one thing people have to pay heed to is to make sure they don't buy too much and diversify a lot more than they're doing right now when euphoria is at the level that it is today. When you talk specifically about the IPOs of today, Another thing that really worries me is a lot of this is OFS and promoters and smart money exiting to retail money. I think a majority of the money that has come in through the IPOs in the last 1 year has been towards smart money exiting and not really towards companies raising capital to increase their capex and grow their business. So one has to wonder if the promoters and the early investors and backers of a company are exiting, what really has changed and why is retail running behind it in the manner that they are. Also, there isn't really a very big moat for all of these businesses. Sure, they are first movers in their own industry. They've done spectacularly well. I am a big fan and user of many of these companies myself. All the critique I might have passed on Nykaa or something like that, I found myself online 2 days ago, buying soap or shampoo on Nykaa. It is genuinely the most convenient way to buy a product today. They ship quickly, great service. So the need for these businesses, I don't think can be questioned. I go back to the initial point I made about valuation, and I feel valuation driven by psychology and driven by mass hysteria in a manner today has run up ahead of how much fundamentally these companies should be valued at. That does not mean I'm asking you to look at the profit number and value it. I think it deserves a premium to the profit number based on the 80-90% growth rate and the scope and potential in the sector. But I think you have to find a middle ground between that and the ridiculous valuations we are seeing in the market today. Where that middle ground is, I do not know, but I think it's lower than where we sit today.
Karan, I'd like to draw your attention to, let's say, within the startup space, the fintech space. Paytm listing today, Policybazaar listing earlier this week. Now, this is one space where we know that change, technology and regulation, the law of the land would change. With Zomato and with Nykaa Bazaar, we can talk about consumer is getting a different proposition, a habit is changing, old habit is becoming a new habit which is more convenient. But with tech, there are old players who are becoming startups, and there are startups who are trying to become NBFCs. What I'm trying to understand, Karan, is that there are startups who are trying to become NBFCs, and the NBFCs who are trying to become startups or fintech. Where will it settle?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And if you look at fintech, right, I think what has clearly changed over the last 4 or 5 years, obviously post UPI, is how much of it has become digitized, both for end users as well as for businesses. And compared to most markets, I think fintech would probably have the largest potential just because of the sheer nature. At the end of the day, almost any company will have some links to payments or receivables. So I think the scope there is a lot more, A, and B, it's a lot much more fragmented and less digitized from many respects, right? So yes, that's probably why you see companies that are startups that are going for NBFCs and the other way around, because that market opportunity is that much there. And unlike most consumer-focused businesses, even a duopoly will not have significant market share. And when I say significant, I mean 30, 40, 50%. So that's where you see a lot of this activity. And ultimately, whether it's a B2B fintech business or a B2C, one should expect that to happen. And the moats around that, once regulation settles in especially, I think become a lot more dominant, right? To the point Nikhil was making, yes, for consumer businesses, the moat is really around the network effect. For a fintech business, it's a lot to do with just how inbuilt you are to some of those companies as customers. So I would expect that to continue to happen. Just one point, right, on something Nikhil said, which I understand why there is caution, why there is questions that come up around the OFS. And partly of it, I think partly is that, investors like us have timed fund lives, right? We also need to show exits and do that. So a lot of it is based on that. But yeah, I think if you're seeing companies which are only doing, 100% or very, very large percent of OFS, I think then you need to stop and think about what's actually being done over there. And I think that has happened in the past as well, right? We've seen that turn out not so good, but ultimately not all I'd wager that not all smart money exits at the time of IPO, but you're wanting to cover some of your investment costs because you've been there for anywhere between 3 to 10 years, right? In the case of Paytm, I know some of their early investors have been there for longer than 10 years. So I think it's a mix, as Nikhil rightly said. And I think that mix is the part that everyone needs to understand. And I think he and Nitin put out a post yesterday, which I thought was very, very relevant in terms of how you should think about this and how you should allocate money to IPOs, where it should be a part of your overall basket, but don't over-index. And think about how you should look at some of these companies. I think that's what gets missed out in euphoric times such as this.
Devina, a slightly different dimension here, which is that we tend to look at markets, and when you're investing in public markets, for 2 to 3 years, 12 to 18 months. Once you extend the timeline for a Paytm or a Zomato or perhaps even Nykaa, the numbers will look very different. Growth will be there, profitability will be much higher. Do you think the best way to look at these businesses is that, look, you're buying them in a different cycle, but you need to be patient for 3 to 5 years minimum before you will get market beating returns, because the markets are pricing in 3-5 years of growth. Is extending the timeline a different way of looking at them, Devina?
Whenever you extend the timeline, Nikunj, you are increasing the uncertainty, and these are new companies. I'm talking even about companies with a long history. Some years back, we did this exercise of all BSE listed companies and said that let us see whether they have shown any profit growth every year. So just that profit growth was greater than zero in every single year for 20 years. And out of those thousands of companies, we came up with a list, I think, of somewhere around 25 companies who had met even that minimal test. Whereas when, as analysts, people are punching in the numbers for and doing a forecast, whether it is for cash flows or profits, it is like growth every year is a given. No, growth every year is, even at any growth, is not a given. And then if you look at these businesses, as Nitin also mentioned, that in many businesses, the moats are not that high. So once you have a proven model, you will also have, besides the players you already have coming in, you look at Paytm, for instance, Paytm, you look at not just the market share, but even its market leadership position, where it is on the league tables, and you will see it dropping every year in the last 4 or 5 years. So about last 4 years or so. So that is the problem, that if it's attractive enough, more people come in, they are also funded. So you don't know what the whole scenario would be like 4 years or 5 years hence. In a very different time. I remember about 20 years ago, Hindustan Lever was getting into atta. And at that time I had met Amul, and I said, like, what do you think? And they said, we don't think it's an attractive market, but if Levers manages to prove that it is an attractive market, we will get in. What's the big deal? So many times people also wait for a business model to be proven, and then more people jump in. So, दिल को बहलाने को ख्याल अच्छा है कि it will be justified maybe 5 years, 10 years later. Who knows? I mean, and you are already, the point is that even if, let us say, they deliver on all that they have said they will deliver on, isn't that already priced in? That is the second question. That is, if they do all of what they're supposed to do, it's probably already in the price, not in every single IPO, but I'm saying broadly as a category. Whereas if they slip up at any time, there is more competition. That then means that you paid too much. So that is the thing. And also, it is that whether I often debate this internally, that whether it is a good thing or a bad thing to have earnings. Nykaa has you can calculate a PE, and you can also compare with, let us say, an Alta in the US, which is in a similar business. If you don't have a PE, then you are scrambling around for what innovative valuation parameter to use to justify it. I have seen reports which are saying that this is the PE on 15 years out earnings. I mean, is that even, I have it's good for a laugh, but really, I mean, who knows what the situation will be 15 years from now, especially in a market which itself, you are not talking of something, Hindustan Lever, or you can still say that you have some visibility of 10 years ago. Maybe that also is not clear, but maybe I'm saying that something which has been in existence only for a handful of years, what visibility do you have for 10 years? So, I mean, you are pricing it to perfection, assuming all of that gets executed. That's the point.
Well, just a coincidence that today Paytm is listed and we are talking about startup valuations. But yeah, our job is to bring views out. The panel here, fortunately, unfortunately, believes that in the startup space, you got to watch your steps. Investing is about buying gold at the price of silver, not valuing silver at the price of diamond. Thank you all very much for joining us on the show, and thank you for enlightening our viewers with your thoughts. You've been very candid and very vocal about how should one understand the startup IPO.
Zomato is what had started the tryst of Indian startups on the Lal Street, the consumer tech giants. What a different day Zomato had on the Lal Street, day one on the Lal Street, than Paytm. Now remember, Zomato's first ever investor was Sanjeev Bikhchandani of InfoEdge India. He's got it right with Zomato. He's got it right with Policy Bazaar as well. Sometimes he's also called the BAP of internet companies. And here he is on ET Now.
I really have never operated as a flipper or a short-term trader. I think when you invest, you should look at investing for the long term. If you look at InfoEdge, the company where I work, we offered the share in 2006 at 320 rupees. Just prior to the global financial crisis, it had peaked at 1400 rupees, in other words, 4x. When the crisis hit in about 6-8 months' time, it had gone down to 25% of its original of the peak value. It was still above IPO price, but only just. And since then, it's sort of in a stop-start manner has been climbing. Over 15 years since we listed in November 2006, the share started trading the first week of November. To now, that's exactly 15 years almost. From the IPO price to now has been roughly 80x return. So many of these tech companies have got very good long-term prospects. Immediate euphoria may push the share price up in the frothy market beyond its intrinsic value. If there's a crash, it'll go way below, but then it'll come back up again because there's intrinsic value. So I would study intrinsic value, and I would set a long-term time horizon, and only then invest.
So do you think the right way of looking at these businesses is that don't look at FY22, FY23, FY24, just look at the growth then, and then you should extend your time frame, because at some point in time these companies would be profitable? Do you think for those who are investing in startup IPOs, I'm talking about not the private market, that's a different bottle of game, the public issues, the public market, one should ignore the fact that they are loss making, and as long as you're ready to increase your time frame from 2 to 3 years, these companies would be very different?
So let me put it this way. I will look at 3-4 things. Number one is quality of management team. Number two is competitive position in the market. Right? What's the market share? Is it a network effect business? Right? On both these, Zomato and Policy Bazaar score very well. Right? And then I would look at what's the long-term market size and what's the addressable market. In both these cases, it's very, very large. And therefore, I would, if it's a 10-15 year time frame, I would probably invest.
The big change, Mr. Bikhchandani, is that the regulatory laws in China have changed. A lot of startup IPOs do have global investors. Some of them do have funding coming from global PE players. They are coming from banks like SoftBank and financials. Given that how the regulatory environment in China is changing, could that have an impact on valuations? Could that have an impact on funding? Because ultimately, when you're valuing some of these companies, you're using a global benchmark, and that global benchmark, in a sense, was coming from Chinese fintech and internet companies.
So my submission is that, and this is anecdotal, what I've heard, is that a lot of asset prices today in India, whether in public markets or in private markets, whether new IPOs or even older shares. A lot of that is happening because of the excess liquidity coming in from overseas. And $4 trillion makes everybody look smart. And that, I think, has made a huge difference, whether we like it or not. And yes, money being diverted from China into India. So I think nobody's benchmarking these companies globally right now, or very few are. It is a lot of it liquidity driven. But look, if you look at Info Edge, our share price was 2,200 rupees approximately, maybe 23, 21. I forget the exact number, in February 2020, right? Since then, it's about 3x. Have the fundamentals improved 3x, or is it liquidity? And if it's liquidity, has a big role. If liquidity has a big role to play in it, it will impact everybody, including the IPOs.
Hello, Mr. Bikhchandani. So, as everybody hunts for, should I say, the next Zomato, the next Policy Bazaar, the next Nykaa, Paytm obviously has not had the day one, the listing, the market debut that Vijay Shekhar Sharma always dreamt of, has talked about many times in the past. I've seen you interact with him publicly. I've seen exchanges on Twitter as well. If you were to speak to him today and to the team at Paytm, what would you say? Because, whichever way you look at it, a founder has worked for so long, almost went bankrupt. Look at the way he managed to stay afloat and then get some of the best investors at the marquee table, and the larger message from Paytm for the startup ecosystem.
No, I think Paytm, look, my advice will always be hang on in there. There have been great companies which had problems in the IPOs, but if the fundamental business is sound, they bounce back. And the bounce back may take a few quarters, but it happens. I mean, I believe I don't have personal recollection, but I've read that the Infosys IPO had a problem in 1993 being fully subscribed, and it just got made it past the finish line. The Facebook IPO, more famously, went to a fraction of its offer price a few months after the IPO, and both these companies have become great companies. So it's not the end of the world. If the focus on executing, focus on the underlying business, and if you execute well, the share price will come back.
And so you're comparing the Paytm IPO with that of Infosys as well as with what happened with Facebook on Wall Street. So I'm assuming that you think that its fundamentals, its business model, etc., all of that is sound. So do you think it was maybe a case of not leaving enough appetite on the table for investors?
I would not want to speculate without having full information and knowledge. And truthfully speaking, I have not really studied the Paytm fundamentals. I only know Vijay Shekhar Sharma as a good entrepreneur. He's a very good entrepreneur. He has faced adversity in the past and bounced back. He came from a very hard place growing up. When he went to engineering college, he didn't know English. He had somehow cleared, he knew numbers. He did not know English. And he had to learn English in college. And from that background, from a rural background, from a very, very economically, a family of very modest financial means, he has made it this far. There is something he has. And that quality, I think, will come forward and he will execute well going forward. I am hopeful.
Telling VSS in the morning, Sanjeev ji, that sapne dekho to Hindustan bhi dekho aur Vijay Shekhar Sharma jaise dekho. I mean, he has made an unforgettable brand, from an unknown company to an unforgettable brand. I mean, it is truly inspirational, that kind of an entrepreneurial journey. What happens in the market, I'm sure we both know, that is a function of demand and supply. But my next question to you, sir, is, and again, we are referring to public market. The general view is that when Infosys went public, it was the beginning of a new cycle. When HDFC went public, it was beginning of a new cycle. And if you bought into some of these good companies when they were young, they turned out to be great wealth creators. But that may not be the story for some of the new internet companies. When they're going public, the average market cap is north of $10 to $12 billion. And they are actually giving exit to PE investors, which means if you participate in them and even if you get the company right and the business right, your chances of making great returns may be very modest.
All this beginning of cycle is all hindsight. I want to know how many analysts called it a beginning of a cycle in 93 when Infosys went public. How many called it later on when HDFC Bank went public? Ye sab hindsight hai. We will know, we will know 10 years from now or 15 years from now whether this was or was not a beginning of a new cycle. It's very hard to read the tea leaves right now and say, hey, it's not a beginning of a new cycle.
For someone who's identified the original unicorns of India, and when I say original unicorns, Zomato, Policy Bazaar, what do you make of the number of unicorns which have got created this year? 34 unicorns, and across the board now, from a food delivery company to a fintech to a SaaS company to a meat company. You use the word liquidity and ease of money, but is that the reason why we are seeing so much of unicorn taking birth?
What I always tell young entrepreneurs, don't focus on valuation, focus on just building value. Valuation is something the market gives you. It's a consequence. It's a consequence of many things. Number one is your company, your underlying, what kind of company you have. Number two is liquidity. Number three is sentiment. Right? Number four is geopolitics, which again impacts liquidity. If China is out of favor, then more money comes to India. So what's not in your control, don't bother about. Focus on what's in your control. Your customers, your offering, how well your business is performing. Valuation is something that the market gives you or doesn't give you. And if $4 trillion liquidity had not happened, would we have had so many unicorns? That's a point to ponder.
I like that one. Founders must focus on building value and not valuation. And in fact, that was also a moot point of what Vijay Shekhar Sharma was telling Nikunj soon after the listing, saying, I focus on my customers and that is the most important thing. Sanjeev Bikhchandani, we're also in completely uncharted territory. The new listed companies, as they grow bigger, they're clearly becoming more ambitious. They're more agile, they're nimble-footed, and we've seen that recently with Zomato, which is wanting to invest in other companies. The market regulator is also seeming to get concerned, wanting to tighten the noose, wanting to have quarterly updates on how IPO proceeds are being used, whether there should be a cap on M&A activity. Is this the way to go?
Well, look, obviously, if there's a law, it must be followed. It has to be followed. And I'm pretty sure SEBI is, got some good reasons why they're thinking of these rules. So we'll wait and watch and we'll see what rules emerge. And then obviously we'll all have to follow them.
Mr. Bikhchandani, but I also want to ask you, because we've seen so many oversubscriptions, and we must remember we're in the midst of a bull market, and it looks all hunky-dory in the middle of a bull market. But today, see what has happened. A quick reminder for keeping the retail investors' protection on top of mind. Where do you stand? Do you think it's time to increase the retail quota as so many more startups head to the Lal Street? Our next wave will have Delivery, it's going to have Oyo, Ola, Byju's, PharmEasy.
He's got it right. If the company is loss-making going public, I think 75% institutional is good. Because see, institutional investors are discerning investors. They do their research, they do the homework, and then they come in, right? You don't want retail investors who perhaps do not have access to the same research or the same ability to analyze, going into something and then getting hurt. So I think institutional investors, a higher percentage in loss-making company IPOs is a very good idea. It's a good safeguard to prevent retail investors getting hurt.
Right, fair point, sir. My next question is, this is Nikunj again, that Indian capital markets, they demand a quarterly update. That is what it is. Every quarter you have to give an update. Your P&L is scrutinized, your quarterly numbers are scrutinized, there are analyst calls. Now with some of the startups or some of the new internet companies, they in a sense have not been accustomed to get this kind of an scrutiny done. Do you think Indian markets or Indian public markets are mature enough to handle some of the companies? Because in some of the new internet companies, there are acquisitions, there are write-offs, there are investments. There would be a completely different accounting and different communication which may vary quarter on quarter.
No, well, the accounting standards don't change, right? Your results might change, but the accounting rules, norms, standards don't change, and they should not change. I think the fact that they have to give quarterly numbers is a good requirement because it gets more transparency and investors can then make more informed calls. But look, I do think institutional investors are mature enough to handle this because they've seen it globally. And they will go deeper into the story. They will analyze, they will ask questions, and then they will produce their models and then figure out if they want to stay invested, buy more, sell, whatever. So I think it's fine. The system is currently fine. I think Indian markets, especially institutional investors, are now mature enough to handle this.
I'm going to phrase my next question rather carefully. Do you think in the Indian startup IPO market, currently there is an overvaluation, there is a euphoria, or there is a bubble? Because if there is an overvaluation, a correction will kick in, they will stabilize. If there is a bubble, there will be a meltdown.
I don't believe the tech IPO markets are any more overvalued than the broader market. So if there is liquidity, there's liquidity everywhere, in the older shares, in the IPO shares as well. So if there's a correction, there'll be a correction everywhere.
So is it a tough time to be an investor? Because A, there is liquidity, B, there is a bit of a froth which is getting, which is there. Is it getting tough for you to find the next Zomato or the next Policybazaar?
Actually, we invest early stage. We are the first institutional check-in, and therefore we are very, very far away from public markets when we go in, right? And is there competition there? Is that competition among investors increasing? Answer is yes, it is. But also outcomes are larger given where the public markets are. Market sizes are larger given the internet and smartphone penetration in India, and and how much the Indian economy has grown over the last couple of decades. So markets go up, markets go down. You know, you got to keep investing, and when markets are frothy, you got to be a lot more discerning on what valuation you're going in at and how much money you're putting out. I am not an expert public market investor. I'm not an expert in public markets. You know, we are listed, so I know a little bit about how some dynamics play out. Zomato Policybazaar are listed, so I know a little bit about how some dynamics play out. But otherwise, we're not experts in public markets. We know a bit about very early stage investing in private markets. And there, I would say competition is increasing, valuations are increasing, round sizes are going up. But that's natural when there's a lot of liquidity.
Last question. Sanjeev Bikhchandani is a billionaire investor. How easy is it for someone who's got a great idea to approach Sanjeev Bikhchandani? How can one approach? I'm asking this question perhaps on behalf of our viewers, and we'll put it on internet. If somebody has an idea, how does one reach you?
Or send an email. Very simple. I'll connect with a little bit of information about what you're doing, and I'll connect you to the team. And my email ID is sanjeev@naukri.com.
That's an easy one to remember. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your valuable thoughts.